What is up, everyone? Welcome to PricePlow. Today we're podcasting with none others than Drew Peters from now Alpha Lion. We've talked to him before. Drew, I feel like we've talked to you at every stage except for like the supplement review.
Yeah, and it is nice to always share this journey with Sir Benjamin Kane and Mike of PricePlow. Those are very formal names. Sir Benjamin Kane and Mike of PricePlow. I mean, fun fact, Ben is technically Sir Benjamin Kane. He did stay at the Excalibur 1 year for supplies. Yeah, I'll never forget this because the first thing I hear in the morning, and this is like sharp, show the expo is like, I stayed in the castle last night. I'm like, do tell, Ben. And he's like, well, the novelty wore off. I thought it'd be funny, but Drew, it was not funny. And now I'm stuck in the castle.
I should say it's April 8th. I'm joined by Mike Roberto. And I think this should probably set the tone for today. We have a lot of fun when we get to podcast with Drew because we're definitely going to talk about some science, but we also have a good time. So first off, the big congratulations. Drew is now the Chief Science Officer, Vice President of Scientific Affairs. The title is very important to get right. And we're super excited because Alpha Line is a brand that we have had the pleasure of working with, working around, like having a lot of fun with over the years. And I've always felt like they were on the forefront of innovation in a lot of ways. A lot of props to Jordan for being a businessman that also was able to deep dive into the science. But at a certain point in scaling, we had a lot of great conversations where we said he needed to find someone who could handle it. And Drew, definitely, I'm excited to talk to you about it because a lot of the times I've talked to you about this and I've talked to Jordan about this. To scale to the level that they want to scale to, you not only have to be able to introduce innovation, but also make it affordable for the consumer. Like, so we're not pricing the product out of the hands of normal consumers. So I'm super excited to talk about what you've got coming. Maybe a good thing to start off with was like what you're doing right now. We've had a couple of releases recently, like the Scorch, the Superhuman Sport, and a few things that we can talk about.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the latest drop we just had hit the shelves. Well, econ or them maybe both as well. On April 3rd was Superhuman Sport. I apologize if Vance, you're clicking. That's my very ambitious German Shepherd. So ignore that. She always likes to be a part of the show. But yeah, this is one we're very excited for, Superhuman Sport. And it released in what was special, not only in new flavors that were pre-workout of the month, which we're sure we're going to talk about in this episode, but also new product. We kind of did a special flavor, special new product, like a double excitement for the drop of it. But it's been interesting. The feedback has been great. Everybody's been really pumped when they saw the formula, which is awesome, getting that positive feedback. The only complaint that we've had is, sometimes people, you and I've discussed this, initially hearing sport, unfortunately, over the years, that word has been negative connotation to it because like sometimes that's been some brand's entry into food, drug, and mass. And for those casual listening, sometimes food, drug, and mass is a lower price point consumer. They're not looking to pay for that specialty, aka retail, like GNC, Vitamin Shop, normal sports nutrition price. But the people like, oh, is this going to be a cheap Alpha Line product? That's not the case at all. We designed it, as the name implies, for sport. It has powered by, adaptogens, not focusing as heavy on the stimulant side of things, flipping all the right switches for somebody that's not looking necessarily to get a pump, or they're not just typical meathead or just, looking for a stim bomb. And that's what made it really special. It's the first of many, and this isn't a product pitch, but we were, I give them the leash here, which is really cool. Props to Jordan for definitely keeping the integrity of the brand we stand for, like giving us that leash to put money into the product and not worry about the race to the bottom, cheapest, highest margin things. That's just setting the foundation rather than moving forward, which is really cool. But yeah, that dropped. We had, as you mentioned, the Scorch drop as well. Previous to that, our liquid Creatine product featuring Mitoburn, Chlorburn GP, and of course the Sweat Factor GBB. So we've had two hot releases already, and there's a lot of stuff coming. Next one mid-month will be Superhuman Sport in the two staple flavors, and then kicking things off in a very big way in May, which we can segue into a little bit.
Cool.
Now, should we share this label at all real quick? Or, honestly, so Superhuman Sport as of right now is not available on your website. I did find it with our friends at naturalbodyinc.com. So I'm having an issue trying to share my screen. Maybe we can just pop it in here. But overall, it looks like a pretty fun formula. And it's not going to be, from what I see on my screen, it's not going to be insanely caffeinated. Is that correct?
Correct. The idea was just to have it enough to pick you up, smooth energy, a blend of the anhydrous as well as caffeine, extend a natural time release caffeine, about like a cup of coffee, enough to get you focused, locked in, but the rest of it in the formula shines because, the adaptogens and powers, the things for ATP production, support of that. That was the emphasis here.
I see it really being beneficial for a lot of different people. Like Drew, you've been boxing recently. You don't want to use Superhuman Extreme and go box. You're going to get pumped up. You might have too much stim. Mike swims a lot. You're doing those overhead strokes. You don't want to be putting blood in those really awkward places. People don't realize that with actual sports, you're not looking for, a massive full pump. You're looking for the right kind of energy. And I'm excited for it. I have to, obviously selfishly say that the rhodiola in there I'm really excited about. Obviously, Rodeo Prime from NMB, but you've got a couple different things in there that are going to offer a very different feeling than what people would normally be getting from a pre-workout.
Yeah, a lot of these, like a lot of the sport pre-workouts, and I do enjoy them. They have just like a half dose of citrulline, a half dose of beta-alanine, whatever. You went in a completely different direction. Like in 2 scoops, you got a full dose, 2.5 grams of betaine, but you also have the D-ribose in there, and working with ATP production. L-ornithine, I think, a highly underrated ingredient for flushing out the fatigue and everything. You've added LF-ATP, so a little bit more ATP support. And then you have the caffeine. I see a blend, 75 milligrams of anhydrous. And then you're using a natural time release caffeine, 25 milligrams of Caff Extend. Is that 25 milligrams of actual caffeine, or is that 25 milligrams of the product, which yields a certain amount?
The total yield is the 83 milligrams. So that's
okay.
kind of how I know it. Yeah.
Sweet. And then you got some Pico 2, some mushroom action, Aquamin, the Rodeo Prime 6X, like we mentioned, 300 milligrams of 2 scoops. I'm stoked about that. Yes. And then Vita Cherry Sport, 400 milligrams, solid dose there, and all amplified by estrogen. This is like a way, way different pre-workout supplement than basically anything we've seen. Especially, we have a lot of people who get excited when we show the low caffeine, because not everyone wants to, like Ben said, if you're getting a box, not everyone wants 300 milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a scoop of Extreme if it's Ben, because I mean, when these hands are rated E for Ben Kane, we're going to throw down supply side. Not really, anyway. You're probably going to think I'll throw a bear hug. Hey, the bromance is real. The bromance is real. But yeah, that's exactly it. Like, even for, and I am not even that freaking old, but now I can say it's like, as I've gotten older, I've gotten away from the heavy stems. Like, this could be a great product, for, like Ben mentioned, the boxing, or people that do cross training, or like something they want alternative for that endurance factor versus just the pump. Even for me, like on like training legs, with my heart rate getting that high, I don't even want a mass amount of stims. That's where like, our normal Superhuman Pre and those type of products come in handy. But this is exactly it, something versatile. And I'm glad that, people are seeing for what it is. It's very different, and for that reason. But the part 2 is, even then, if you really wanted to stack the Superhuman Sport, along with like any pre-workout, like with your normal stim and pump, you can. You have to keep in mind total caffeine intake. Like if you, for example, go with like a normal pre around 300 mgs, the full serving of each, about 383 milligrams. That's getting up there, but it's still not outrageous, Mm-hmm.
Was this?
This also could be used in in a late afternoon workout too. Like some people, they're up all night because they made mistakes. Been there, done that. I can handle this if it was a post, after work workout. So I think this is there's a lot of people that need to see this and then decide like if this could be something that's good to have in the arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
I was recommending adding it with a pump too. Even easily just 1.5 grams of nitrosgene adding into that, like, would probably round out the pump very, very well. You could have some more than that, but the betaine already being in there gives you a little bit of a leg up on that.
Mm-hmm.
So was this something that you kind of like you coming into a brand? What does that look like? Like coming into Alpha Line, do they already have like a list of demands for you? Like, or do you kind of have like your outside thought process coming in as well?
It was a combination of both. That's the thing that's been really cool right off the bat, is I've got to work, in this case with Jordan and Synergy. And that's typically how I work best with brands, working direct with the CEO, like the brand this size, where you have that team approach where everybody there, but work directly with people that make the final decisions, kind of run ideas past. The idea came up. He was like, hey, I was wondering about, maybe a Superhuman Sport, something a little bit different, because like how he personally trains is more of that cross training thing. I'm the meathead bodybuilder. I'm like, you know what? I have something very cool in mind. He sparked the idea. I'm like, I already know where I'm going with this. And that's kind of how we work back and forth. Sometimes I'll bring something in, hey, I'm really excited. I can't spill it yet, but there's something I thought was freaking ingenious that we're looking to hopefully launch toward the end of June. It's so stupidly simple, but I think everybody's going to love it. For example, broad teams like let's roll. There's other times like, hey, what do you think about this? It's not an immediate thing. Let's build it out, see what it looks like. It's a great working relationship. Obviously sometimes he'll present ideas and what would you do with this? I'm like, how much money do I got? And we'll roll. And then sometimes it's a collaborative thing like, okay, hey, we're always looking at different things, different pathways. This was just the product of, in this case, hey, I'm thinking about maybe doing something like a Superhuman Sport, something that's not necessarily for the bodybuilder meathead type thing, more for like the training. I'm like, I got you. And that was actually a very fun, interesting challenge too, because one, it wasn't, I purposely didn't do this, is that everybody's like, oh, well, you missed this, it's missing this. I'm like, it's not missing citrulline. Imagine that. It's the first time I got him, I go, God,
Of course.
love that. Or, if you're 18, it's missing creatine. It's missing this. I'm like, I purposely didn't put those in. So an interesting thing, I think I actually very distinctly, and props to you on this, Mike, you did the challenge, not like TikTok challenge, but hey, make a pre-workout that supports ATP production without creatine. So that was an interesting thing here. And I was like, you know what? I don't believe in creatine's pre-workout anyway. It's not necessary. Let's maybe have something that works and flipping all those switches and supporting ATP production without creatine. And that's kind of where we arrived at. So that's where we are,
That wasn't exactly what I did. I did a formulator's corner. That was like a mitochondrial boosting pre-workout. And I did actually include a creatine, but it was creatine pyruvate. So I went a different direction. But the point is though, is creatine necessary pre-workout? I mean, creatine is going to lead to benefits in sports, like of all kinds. I mean, this research has been out there forever at this point, but do I need it pre-workout? And that's the question. And the answer is probably no, but you should either get enough creatine through eating a ton of meat or get it elsewhere in the day. Pre-workout, a lot of, and so this is obviously an argument that a lot of people have, but like a lot of people want their pre-workout to work with, for your workout, and creatine is not going to most likely isn't going to acutely do much for your workout as long as you're keeping saturated in general.
Exactly. And it's like the come to different things. I won't call it directly. You know where I'm going with this. And Ben and I will actually bring this up, and this has happened multiple times, where in theory, I'm not going to ever support, purposely underdosing anything. But to Ben's point, which he's brought up frequently, some people for things like beta-alanine, for example, you don't have to take it all in one shot. It'll saturate over time. You can get it throughout the day. The thing is that, like most people, which I get, it makes sense, even argue back, is hey, put the full dose of beta-alanine in there, because most people aren't going to be getting it from other sources or supplementing it separately. Therefore, hey, that makes sense to put in one thing. The same with the creatine. It doesn't have to be taken in one shot. It doesn't have to be in a and the thing is too, like if the idea is to maintain daily creatine levels, to me, it doesn't make sense to put it in a pre either, unless you're taking that pre-workout every single day. So you're going to have to supplement separately anyway to truly, quote unquote, get the benefits of creatine, right? So therefore, like, hey, it doesn't have to be in there. That's kind of where that multiple angle argument comes from. We've seen both sides of that.
I always find the creatine and the beta-alanine thing to be an interesting discussion, because you could put 1.6 grams pre-workout and you could have it somewhere else in your stack. But first of all, now you have to sell your consumer on a second product. And you also are assuming that consumer wants to be taking a full stack of Alpha Line products, which in the earlier years of supplements, maybe people were like all about a brand, but especially in today's day and age, most consumers are really mix and matching between brands and enjoying that. And you really can't, I don't think you can count on them taking all that at a time. That being said, Alpha Lion traditionally has been an all-in-one pre-workout approach. Your superhumans have generally had your creatine, your beta-alanine, like full dosages. So has that, not that you're not an all-in-one person, but you're more of an abbreviated person, or more of like a get the most out of the least kind of formulator. Has that been something that you've had to introduce to the team? Like right off the bat, the citrulline thing is a funny thing with Drew, that you don't use citrulline, not because you don't like it or whatever. I'm sure we'll get into why you don't use it, but has that been a switch for you? Because Alpha Lion has traditionally offered a lot to their consumers in a formula.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I can say we are dropping the V2 versions of our pre-workouts in May, which is great. Just from an update standpoint, so on and so forth. And honestly, it hasn't much of a switch. It always depended on kind of what the budget allows. A lot of times I've had to work within a certain cost range that didn't allow me to do as much. That isn't going to change with Alphaline in terms of we are going to continue to offer those comprehensive formulas. We're still mindful of like, hey, we don't want to, it sounds like a lot of times you want to over engineer something, right? If you're given that bigger runway, like in the hardest question I'd have to answer if you were to ask me, if you were to make a pre-workout, regardless of cost, what would you put in it? I'm like, shit, I'd have to think about that, right? Because then you just be like, oh, you start adding everything. You're like, okay, wait. So to scale it back, I'd rather have a cost in mind to have to hit versus have a free range. Yeah, this kind of interesting thing. Just if you could eat anything in the world, what would you eat? I don't know. Like shit, give me options, like narrow it down. But that's what makes it fun. So back to the point of this is like, no, it is going to continue to be that kind of all-in-one checking the right switches. And that was honestly an interesting challenge too, because one thing when I came in and I stepped back and looked at all the pre-workouts we had on hand. We had the pre, the extreme, the supreme, and the pump, and the burn. I'm like, okay. And I look at the differences between them, like, man, that's like, there's not a massive like difference, aside from some of the stimulatory things between these pre-workouts, So, okay, how can we make them so it makes sense in terms of having the different levels to it? So as we were very mindful as a team working back, we don't want to change too much in terms of these SKUs that are successful, right? I don't have to redo the whole car. You don't have to strip it down. To the team's credit, Jordan and team and Troy did an amazing job putting together the brand, the formulas as it was. That made me very excited and interested. Like, damn, I don't have to quote unquote fix anything. Like I can just help build, which is fantastic. We have a fantastic team in place. I can't emphasize that enough. And we're very organized in that aspect. So it's been the transition moving forward. It's been really cool with that. Okay, hey, how can we take what we have, update it, make tweaks, make it better, and then build on the new fun stuff like the sport, the other launches we have coming. So to your point, though, it'll continue to be the kind of the all-in-one offering, which is great. And it's a refreshing perspective, having more leeway to go ahead and run with some of these new things, like I was very frustrated for a long time with different places wanting to use, for example, MitoBurn. So it came out. I had one of the first opportunities to use it way back before it got released. Working with NNB closely, they've been very good and cutting edge a lot of things. Like I was first to market with Chloroburn GP back in 2019, early then. But damn, it's expensive. Maybe not, but like, damn it, these guys, if they something's cool, they're not afraid to let me pull the trigger and run with it. And that's one of the coolest parts about some of the innovation we have going on here. We get the opportunity to launch some things, quote unquote, first. So that kind of sums it up. And I know we're segueing other things, but there you get the point.
I think I'm really excited to see the full offering of the pre-workouts, because admittedly you have so many that at a certain point I stopped really having a clear image of what the strongest and what the I don't want to say weakest, but the least stim and like that gradient. I don't have any concept of where the products line up. I know Superhuman Supreme is obviously the strongest, but you've had a lot added in. And so to see like Supreme, Burn, the Classic, Sport, like clearly defined along a spectrum of stimulant or however you're grading them would be really cool. Because you have a lot.
Yeah. And that is one thing we did do is, okay, make it purposeful, make it, and that's a big part where now, as I continue to expand to the brand, is working on the brand education. I'm honestly probably doing some of the most content that I've ever done. And that's the things that start building me in for that. And the thing is, to the exact point where Superhuman naming has become a massive thing. It's cohesive with the brand. Okay, how do we carry that over, but also have it make it a family of products and have it make sense? Which pre-workout is right for me? This sounds familiar. A lot of similar brands that have multiple offerings. That's the key. Okay, hey, if your daily driver, for example, how we break this down, is a Superhuman Pre. Everything you need in a pre-workout will be delivered in this product. The Superhuman Extreme, that's for somebody looking for that extra stim hit, those extra bells and whistles. The performance, the chassis of the car stays the same, but hey, I want that extra hard-hitting stim component of it, and boom. Supreme is going to go by the wayside for a bit, is so close to Extreme. Okay, we're going to chill on this for a bit. But then we have the revamped Burn, which has been amazingly successful in its own right. And honestly, it turned out to be one of my favorite products as of late that I've been using. Like I'm really enjoying the MitoBurn aspect of it, the sweat aspect of it. the new version slaps. I'm not going to lie. I'm excited for it. And then, of course, you have the offering of the Sport we just added, and then for the Stim Free, the pump. So that's kind of have your, hey, pre-workout, extreme, or your burn. You have the pump, you can stack with any of them. And then now you have the versatile as a standalone or stackable with the Sport. So it kind of has like those different silos is how we've kind of gone about that.
I think
nice.
totally
Like, in my opinion, like just, I get excited looking at this sport because I know that it's going to feel good. That, sometimes like if you look at it, some people just want to feel good. And this is kind of that product. Once in a while, I will grab a pre-workout, not necessarily for workout, but like as an energy drink. I'm drinking one now. I don't really love energy drinks. I would rather take a scoop of powder that's got something like a rhodiola in it. So like this definitely excites me. I personally think you've hit the gradient pretty well. I'm curious about how the Superhuman burn goes. And I think you did, or I guess Jordan and the team did incredible with the flavors, because you got to work with and around and with the spice, you can't really, I don't think you can try to like fight it too much. And the original batch of Superhuman burns did, I think, fantastically well with the calorie burn with that Grains of Paradise extract that it gets you going. So kind of curious to see how the new versions play out there. Are you involved in any of the flavoring?
When I first came in, I just didn't have the bandwidth. We continue to do it at the Co-Man. They've done a great job working with them. And how I've been here so far, I've been directly overseeing that. I work with them saying, hey, this is what I need. And then if I get the first samples of it, it's weird working from my house. I have like more sample containers in my house now than I've known what to do with. I'm finding them like in the freaking microwave at this point. I'm like, oh shit. So it's interesting, but now actually I have an R&D trip. I'm super pumped to have more bandwidth and time. Now I've got the foundation laid. I'm going out to the flavor lab. I'm working there for 3 days, gloves on. I'm excited to get back in like the lab setting after I've been away, one, because previously I had a hiatus from releasing product due to certain constraints at a previous brand because we had to maintain the current inventory. But now we get to expand to that new territory of new flavors. We do the pre-workout of the month here, and being more in hands-on involved is great.
Have you met the guys on the team physically? Like, I know that
I'm not.
you're geographically dispersed throughout the lands.
It is. Okay. That's one of the question we get though, is like, oh, did you have to move? Do you have to relocate? Oh, hey, Drew, I'd love to come down to Florida. I'd love to see your new office. I'm like, well, my new office is my house. None of us are here. This is weird because we are completely remote. And even though we're remote, this is one organized teams I've ever worked with, which is awesome. I think that I tell people too, it's all or none. What I found is working in office is great. You have a team there collaboratively. If you have people out of office, it gets kind of messy because then some people are on the same page. On the flip side, if everybody's remote, but all are integrated in things like Slack, we use predominantly, or things like that, it's like, it works really well. So either A, you're all in office, or you're all remote. It's when you have that hybrid one, it gets kind of weird. That's just my perspective. It's been so far. It's been refreshing for how organizing are.
I will not disagree with that. Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of like fully remote companies that I think we deal with, I honestly, I think Alpha Lion is the most successful of the bunch that I could think of in my head. Most of them are office based, but yeah, I agree. Like I have a buddy who he was working remotely 2020, 2021, and he didn't want to make the drive was really part of the thing. And this was not supplement industry related, but he kind of like missed those hallway meetings, and he kind of, he got worked around and eventually like fell out of the company. And it's a shame, but you either gotta be there if everyone's going to be there. But at the same time, if you're all remote, then I guess everyone's got to just click on the Asana task or the Slack page or whatever you're working through.
I think those hallway meetings are important, unfortunately, you know, and I think that like at least in my experience, that flavor trip, that's gonna kind of substitute that, those 3 hardcore days in a row of just being in the lab, going back and forth.
And that will be fun. Troy is going to come down from Vegas and join me on the second half of it. We're going to do, once again, do some content around that, hey, bring the science guy here, work on the flavor stuff, but also give like the people like, hey, a behind the scenes thing. How does a flavor process work? What does like a flavor lab kind of look like? How do we go through the R&D process? What kind are we looking for? What are the different dynamics that go into flavoring, sweetness, acid levels, masking, the base, the flavor, like, those little minute things. I think it'd be kind of cool to have people see behind the veil. Then of course, have some, also too, from my perspective, it's exciting to kind of, show. A lot of people don't get to see that. You guys have. I know Ben had, you have previous experience, and probably Mike as well. like, how does the flavor development actually work? It isn't just a matter of like, throwing random things in a shaker, in a beaker and mixing it up, right? It's like, okay, hey, we start with the base, add the component by component, kind of walk through it, but also to see, have Troy get a chance to kind of see that behind the scenes thing. That'd be kind of cool to collaborate with, so we are very excited for that as well. Plus we're working on a few new exciting SKUs from scratch that I'm very, man, that's the problem with this podcast is it's early, so I can't spill some of these things, but we have a massive 2022 lined up with a lot of new things and new categories. Let's put it that way.
No, we could definitely do it again. Are you bringing a videographer? Like, how's the content going to work out?
Yep, Troy's going to handle that in terms of getting the video guy down there. So we'll definitely have some good content with that.
Awesome.
I think it's kind of cool. You're becoming this
proper bench press.
I like that. You're like the science guy. Like it's because Troy's very relatable to a normal consumer. I think, like he might be more educated in terms of, training and stuff, but like, I think he's very relatable. So when he refers to you as the science guy, it's very kind of funny because I consider you to be relatable to the normal consumer. So it's just like funny how there's like levels to it in terms of, who's there.
Yeah. I think it'll work out well. Well, yeah. Excited to see those videos.
I'm my own personality. I mean, it's interesting because like you guys, well, Mike, not as much, hasn't interacted with you much. I've known Ben for years, and like on occasion I'm funny, and people that know me more well, like, dude, this guy's fucking hilarious. Like, I don't expect him to be like a dry ass like scientist. Oh, the science guy. Then they see me like, okay, wait, that's the science guy, the guy that's the 100 hours of ink and a meathead and the piercings and shit. That's then they hear me talk like, okay, I did not expect that at all, but you, sir, are entertaining. Put that way, the people love go to dinners I'm at because it's a dear podcast. I don't give a fuck. I keep things lively, I keep things entertaining, right? Because it doesn't matter how smart you are, how much you know, if you can't convey your messaging in a simple way that everybody can understand. That's the gift I have, is I'm able to explain complicated things simply and make it relatable. And that's what makes it fun, because what's good with all the knowledge you have if you can't share it with other people? So I think that'll be actually a very fun thing. To your point, Troy has his own style, like the goofy, like the gym bro thing, but he's also very intelligent. I think that could be a very cool synergy. We're actually planning out, like the science and bro science, the yin yang, and go through some videos and talk about stuff. We already have working on kind of how we want to do some of these fun videos. So
I love it.
It'll be a good time.
Yeah, you got the glasses too. So you got that. Are you going to be wearing a lab coat?
Maybe not. I don't know. Like it's funny because you should wear a lab coat. I'm like, I know, but bro, I'm not gonna put on this shit just to make it like look. I mean, typically I'm formulating in like a t-shirt and shorts, bro. I mean, you see Ben see me at Expos. I'm the guy at supply side wearing a polo and like athletic shorts and Nikes, and they're like, "Are you supposed to be here? Are you an athlete?" I'm like, no. What?
That was the best part of the first supply side together. Is you and I both showed up in polo and gym shorts, and no one believed what we were. No one believed us when we introduced ourselves. It was super funny. I think too many people wear the lab coats in the content. Maybe it's a controversial opinion from my side, but like we all know you don't have to wear that. Like we've all seen Joey Savage like wear whatever he wants in his lab. Unless you're like actually in a clean room, like.
Exactly. If it's in the manufacturing side, that's completely, let me be very clear to people listening. It's a very different story. If you're walking through a manufacturing facility, you have to have things buttoned up. Your hairnet, in our case, a beard cover, lab coat, the sterile boots. That's a different ball game versus even in the lab, more chill, relaxed settings, on like a flavor lab, something off-site where it's just for something you personally to test to consume. It's not a big deal. It just depends the setting. You don't always have to wear a lab coat and glasses. And as people ask me, I swear people legit ask me, like, wait, you work from home? Like, what do you do for your lab now? I'm like, you realize that most of what I do isn't always in the lab. A lot of it's spreadsheet based and database based. Like I don't have to be in a lab 24/7. I'm not like a 2/4/7 chemist. But hey, if that's what they picture me as, is Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory, by all means.
So where do you mix your stuff up if you are mixing things in the house?
Right now, I just rely on the co-man. Say, hey, I need X, Y, and Z. Go ahead and mix this up in the lab for me and send it out. If it's an emergency, have it overnighted. If I have the luxury of working in the lab, which at a previous show in Pro Supps, we actually had a lab in the office, which was great. I can make Ben samples, things like that. But for right now, for what we're working on, it works just by having, hey, mix this up, send it out. Here's my revisions. Let's knock it out, and then adjust as needed. With the percentages.
Perfect.
So what can we talk about in terms of formula changes? Because we've introduced Scorch and Sport,
Yep.
but you've kind of teased us pretty hard on the next V2 of Superhuman. And Superhuman is definitely what most people are excited about here because like they've been taking it for so long.
I don't think you're going to be drastically shocked, but I think I'll put it this way: like it's not a massive overhaul, but it's enough things where it's going to be noticeable. Like, hey, I like where this went, but at the same time, the person that currently buys it isn't going to look at it like, wait, what the hell is this? This is what I'm buying. It's very recognizable, but there are a few component switches just from the stimulatory source of it. You know, maybe focusing less on just the whole stim load, but also the. Let's put it this way: I'll leave it vague, but kind of direct. When it comes to caffeine, okay, hey, how do we get it so it's going to have a nice effect both now as well as sustained? Maybe an emphasis on a sustained release system, something that we have been in development with a couple of groups for a while there. Another pathway for supporting that caffeine efficacy in terms of how it feels, keeping in the nuts and bolts of, you know, if we are keeping citrulline in the product, mainly because that was actually initial battle. Initially, I'm like, yep, that's going to go by the wayside. We're putting in nitrogen. And after discussion, it was okay, hey, for these, we'll probably leave them, but then we can save that for another down the road SKU. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'm fine with that. You know, as long as I have, you know, the ability to work on a few other things that will work. And this thing, there's nothing wrong with it. You know, so I'm not going to like, you know, say, oh, this doesn't work. It does, right? But, you know, that's the nitrogen and citrulline battle is kind of the ongoing thing. Like, hey, it's cool. It does the job. It has science behind it. Fine. That's fine.
Sure.
So I was cool with it.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask basically the caffeine number because I figured you'd be able to share that. It sounds like so in Superhuman Sport, you do have this Caf Extend natural time release caffeine, and you have kind of a 3-to-1 ratio of anhydrous to that. So can you talk about? It sounds like are you maybe going to use Caf Extend, or like can you explain why it's in Sport versus like a dicaffeine malate or a Zoom XR? Like, have you kind of compared all these different extended release caffeine sources? Can you give us a mini rundown on that since you brought it up?
Yeah, actually, we'll start with the Sport. The reason that the other three SKUs, the Pre, the Extreme, the Burn, are going to have a different technology per se in terms of the time release and sustained release and all this type of things of caffeine. That one will be consistent across the board. The idea behind it is do some branding that has something we kind of like will be flagship for us in terms of an energy system that we've put together that we're going to run with and use across our SKUs because it does have some cool efficacy and data behind it. The Sport, if you notice for other ones, this one is color free, and this one just kind of inherently became kind of a different bird, animal, bird, whatever you want to put it. Whereas, hey, let's do like the natural time release caffeine. It was a cool place to try this and put it in there, like along that same mindset. Hey, not an overload of caffeine, 83 mg. So that's kind of where I ended up doing that one versus something like the Zoom XR or a dicaffeine malate, so on and so forth. And that was kind of how we arrived at that. In the Pre, the Extreme, the Burn, that will be a combination, of course, the immediate release as well as sustained. You'll see exactly what that is. It's not a massive secret in terms of what it is, but it will be something very intriguing. The total caffeine loads are nothing outrageous. 300 in the Pre, 350 in the Extreme, plus other stimulatory components. And then in the Burn, will still maintain at 300 milligrams. Nothing outrageous. It gets to a point, it's like, okay, like what's the point of diminishing returns? You start seeing things with 400 milligrams caffeine, 450, some neighbors down the road from me with 750 milligrams of caffeine, if that's actually what's in the product. I'm like, guys, like what are we doing here? But that's kind of where the direction we took that. So
cool. Okay, so one of the ongoing debates in the industry is naturally sourced caffeine. Do you have an opinion? Can you feel the difference? Do you have a belief one way or the other? Have you gone down the synthetic caffeine rabbit hole or any of that stuff?
it's interesting. I want to say that Ben and I talked about this not long ago. I am pretty sure actually in the last couple of weeks. And
yeah, Ben, that's
one thing
I feel like I may have ruined this conversation. Sorry.
I feel you and I talked about it very briefly, like not long ago. I think
not long ago.
Where personally, it's interesting because I personally have noticed, like for something like Innova Tea or some of these other natural time release caffeines, is that in theory behind it is, because of like the caffeine content along with some of the naturally occurring compounds in it, it kind of offsets the jitters and anxiety and per se that ceiling you get with something that's synthetically made like caffeine anhydrous. Anecdotally, once again, from how I personally feel, I feel really good on something like, say, a C4 Smart Energy with 200 milligrams of caffeine compared to, like, say, an equivalent amount of 200 milligrams of caffeine anhydrous from another product, which is something I've noticed that's very interesting to me. And the reason behind that, now I remember the notes I had on this, some of the natural, it wasn't theanine. It was another compound in terms of how it's metabolized, that offsetting the metabolism of the caffeine. I think that is something interesting to investigate. And I think, once again, it's a matter of, hey, is it where there's a difference from the science perspective, or you just want to be an organically fat hippie per se, like, oh, I only use, naturally occurring agave in my things, well, still sugar, right? Is it something from personal perspective or personal preference, or is there actual science behind it? But I haven't, once again, seen anything definitive from a science perspective between the anhydrous or, say, a natural caffeine.
Right, definitely. Yeah, I think a lot of it's anecdotal, which is why it gets to be a little bit controversial.
Yeah.
One thing I've been wanting to chase down, there's a Joe Rogan episode, I could pull it up, but he had a guy on who kind of went down the rabbit hole of how a lot of this caffeine anhydrous is sourced or created and synthesized. And a lot of it was traditionally made from like the leftover tea leaves and from when they decaffeinate coffee or whatever, but there's simply not enough of that product, that naturally sourced product, to actually go into all the caffeine that we drink in all these different, energy drinks and pre-workouts, et cetera, sodas and et cetera. And so what he was kind of claiming was that a lot of the caffeine anhydrous is actually synthesized from like natural gas as part of like one of the beginning constituents. And I don't know, I would like to get more source on that, because I don't want to claim anything, but it did sound like kind of disgusting. And I mean, I'm okay drinking some chemicals. I'm kind of doing it now, even though what I'm drinking right now is naturally sourced caffeine. But anyway, it's like, I can understand why some of the naturalists or some of the brands that lean towards the natural, or like a product like a Superhuman Sport, you're going to want to have something that has some of those natural constituents alongside to, the natural cofactors. So I see both sides, but I definitely would like to go further down that rabbit hole someday.
I feel like as a formulator, and this is kind of, I don't know, this is a bit controversial to say, but like you have to put things in these products for people to feel happy about and be happy for, even if you don't agree with them. Like putting creatine in your pre-workout. I don't think you should put creatine in your pre-workout, but it'll sell better if you do. And if you can afford it, if it's within the budget, that a lot of people are going to appreciate that. And I feel that's how I feel about like natural ingredients. Like personally, I don't care if my BCAAs come from human hair in China. I don't care at all, because the molecules are exactly the same, right? Leucine is leucine. But it's pretty disgusting. Like admittedly, it's pretty disgusting. And so to go a little bit further on Mike's story, like the whole natural gas caffeine, it was from Monsanto. And Drew, the second you mention Monsanto, it's like these guys make glyphosate, and it's just this whole downhill conversation of what we're about. No one wants anything from that company. But the fact is, caffeine anhydrous is caffeine anhydrous, and if it's pure so long as it's pure 100% caffeine anhydrous, you can't tell the difference where it comes from.
Well, yeah, it's never 100% though. It's usually 99.x or 98 or whatever. It was episode 1722 of the Joe Rogan Experience. Ohio State University historian Bartow Elmore, Bartow. So yeah, around the 18-minute 30-second timestamp, we wrote about this in a Pure Calf article. I think it's worth investigating more.
Oh, definitely.
But Ben, you said that if you put creatine in a pre-workout, it's going to sell more. Are you sure about that? Like, I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know. But point being that like these consumers are going to like feel happier about it. Like you might not agree with them. But like for instance, a couple years ago, we were working with a brand helping with formula, and the owner said we have to put beta-alanine in the pre-workout, and I was like, you don't have to put beta-alanine in the pre-workout. He's like, yeah, but everyone wants beta-alanine in the pre-workout, and that's a fine thing to acknowledge, but you don't have to do anything, right? Sometimes you kind of have to like put stuff in the product to make those folks happy. Like using a natural caffeine, it could have absolutely no benefit, but if those people are happier with that, then that's a fine thing to do.
Or like putting 8 grams of citrulline in a pre-workout.
Or 10 or 12.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. Not knocking citrulline, but these days it's like the question I ask people, like, I have no problem with the ingredient. It works. It's a great ingredient. But the thing is, everybody has got the pitchforks and they see something and it doesn't have a X amount of citrulline. I'm like, oh, hold on. My question is are you upset or are you calling this out because you truly believe and have read the data and really support 8 grams nutrition? Or is it because that's what everybody else is doing and somebody told you that's what you need? And that's a problem with anything. I'll step back there. One interesting thing I've noticed too, to your point of like how the caffeine hydrous, that was kind of gross, the duck feathers and human hair for BCAAs. One thing interestingly that's like been blowing my mind is that especially not so much, but like on the natural space, for example, people this is mind you, like everybody, even it's alarming how many people with PhDs and doctorates and things like that are just putting out bullshit information, like scare tactic bullshit information. Like, did you know, like, I swear to God, like somebody like did this video breakdown on soda, like diet soda, and these are a dime a dozen, but he went out of his way saying things like, do you know why they put caffeine in product? To make you addicted to it. You'll drink more of their soda. I'm like, okay. But then they went down a rabbit hole saying, this is horrible for you. Citric acid. You should never drink anything with citric acid in it. It grows on black mold. I'm like, okay. And then the next thing this kind of thing is, oh, this is a chemical. This is a chemical. I'm like, hey, you know that water's a fucking chemical, H2O. Are you not going to drink that? Like, if you want to mess with people, like, you know what? It's poisonous. It's everywhere. The conspiracy is there's dihydrogen monoxide. It's around just every day. Like they say scary ass words, people get up in arms versus like, okay, hey, understand, like, certain things come from gross places. Mushrooms are a fungus, right? Certain things come from fermentation. Like, how do you think cheese is made? You're basically spoiling milk through different enzymes, right? And causing it to grow, like, just because something sounds gross, it's like, nobody knows behind it. Or like, I'm getting morbid here, man, but do you think a lot of people would still want to have like a steak if they actually walk through a slaughterhouse?
Absolutely not.
People just don't think consciously of, where things come from. So like they have somebody sensationalize something like, did you know this comes from black mold? Or did you know this comes from human hair? I'm like, yeah, okay. I remember one time specifically, and I can say this, I won't get in trouble, and it's okay because it's nothing, what's the word for it? Viscesis, this disparaging, right? One time I was eating cream of rice when I worked at VPX Bang. Okay. And Jack comes in and it's going to be a great story. Jack. And he had I'll have two things to share. One, because it'll just make your sound like for your podcast. I'm sitting there eating cream of rice. Let's say afternoon, the Uncle Ben's cream of rice, whatever, chilling on my Uncle Ben's or whatever brand that was, the orange box. And he's like, yeah, getting all those GMOs in. I'm like, yo, man, that's where I get my superpowers, all this genetically modified rice here. But he had this huge thing against GMOs. But I'm like, bro, that's what I wanted, man. Does it get the bonus material, like the superpowers from it? Like, what the hell? But anyway, like once you get just the GMOs and the cream of rice, I was like, okay, I'm just going to own the comment. The very best thing the guy ever said, aside from being the crazy evil genius that made $1 billion energy drink brand, when I came in and I did the interview years and years and years ago, he said, okay, yeah, we're going to be taking care of this, and this, and you say pass your drug test. And I look at him like, there's an androgen limit. And he's laughing on the floor, just kidding, and walked away. I was like, okay, we're good. But that was the key, the best thing he ever said. He's like, yeah, just get, pending your drug test, you'll be fine. There's an androgen limit.
That's
just
hilarious.
kidding. Slaps me on the shoulder and just walks away. I'm like, okay.
Nice.
But yeah.
Yeah, I guess if there's a one benefit from the last couple of years, it's that we can pretty much disregard anything these PhD level people have said regarding nutrition and health. And, I'm at the point now where like doctors, PhDs, all these think tank people are basically guilty until proven innocent. So that's where I'm at when it comes to, their, dihydrogen oxide.
Dihydrogen monoxide.
Monoxide is a chemical, yes.
To be fair, there's only one person in this industry with a PhD.
We all, and that, I don't know if that, well, so he claims. I mean, he's revolutionizing things, right? I've never seen somebody get so happy about, clinically removing the other letters from a word, make it innovative and adding 500 milligrams per ingredient and calling it novel. But hey, what do I know?
Hey, can I ask you, back to the topic of Superhuman, is the theanine still going to be living in about 6 months?
No. I took it out back and shot it in the head twice.
Just to make
no
sure.
fan of the theanine.
There'll be no theanine. No theanine to be seen.
I don't actually. I mean, to be 100% fair, I don't have really that big of a problem with theanine. But you guys use a fairly large dose of theanine, which I understand in the Supreme, because that's a fairly heavy hitting product. But I don't think I've used regular Superhuman Pre in this version I'm looking at right now. And 350 milligrams of theanine is a lot versus like a normal. Well, it's 375 milligrams of caffeine actually. So with another 100 milligrams of theobromine, this actually might be fine ratio. But knowing you was really what I was asking.
Yeah, there's no theanine, and for those listening casually at home, it's interesting because like the main reason people do that, they just want to offset that massive amount of caffeine, prevent the jitters and the crash. It's like the cheap man's version of adding in that little smidgen of teacrine that kind of offsets the sedative effect, you know. That's the thing. I think you and I talked about this, and once again, we bring up all fun topics. Is like people like teacrine to me, like is a horrible, shitty stimulant. It doesn't stimulate at all. To me, the benefit coming from it is pairing it with caffeine. It works beautifully paired with caffeine, and extension of that to prevent the crash, keep it from hitting that per se ceiling. But as take it by itself, like man, you're not gonna feel much from it unless you go really high. And even in that case, then it's not like everybody was necessarily chalked up to be great ingredient, but not from the stimulatory standpoint. And I know that I'm getting some text from Compound Solutions after that. I love you guys, but you know damn well we've talked about this and it's still a great ingredient, but it is what it is.
When it comes to Ben and I talking about pre-workouts and certain PhDs and everything, I actually am a fan of dynamine the most, but I'm cool with caffeine, dynamine, teacrine combo quite a lot. I'll take dynamine pretty much any time of the day. So that's been just an ingredient that just it does me well. Dynamine with the Rodeo Prime, like that kind of a little bit of something extra on top of the caffeine. So I don't need to go bomb out on caffeine. So that's kind of where I like to sit, but everyone's different. Teacrine, I could do either. I can go either way.
My understanding is that there's like a bell curve with body weight for teacrine. I've used a lot of their like blended capsules and felt good. I don't think I've ever used teacrine on its own and felt anything significant from it. I've heard people using it as a sleep aid on its own.
It seems to like potentiate other things with it. Like the most I've taken was 200 milligrams, and it wasn't for me.
I've always enjoyed it in blends. I've always enjoyed it in a blend. On its own, I didn't get the same. Like, what was it, like 2017? Everyone wanted teacrine. Like, I always make this joke. Like, I'd go to the gym and there'd be like guys that have no clue what any amino acid is, but they knew they wanted teacrine, and I give Compound a lot of credit for being able to garner that respect. Yeah, it's like the closest you can get to household name, in this industry. But like, it sizzled out really quickly, and I really like it in blends. Like, this is what I've come to understand.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is timing too. Got to realize that we're at this junction after like the post DMAA apocalypse and DMHA. Everyone pretty much knew this thing was not gonna be around for a long time, not gonna make it. And so teacrine was right there at the right time and everything. Although I think obviously the flavoring was tough. I think things would have gone better if dynamine had come out first. But again, flavoring was brutal on those, and it took a long time for flavor houses to like kind of figure it out.
Props to Drew. Drew was kind of who turned me on to the higher caffeine, lower dynamine dosage with Icon, I think.
Icon, 2019. We were actually the first in that case to launch dynamine into main markets of GNC and Vitamin Shop. And at that point, GNC almost didn't take the product because they didn't have the official GRAS status they needed. We came to the crossroads to Vitamin Shop's getting it. They're going to be first. First of dynamine's going to be in there. Launching it direct D2C, maybe to device exclusive. Okay, are we not going to sell GNC or make it a separate product, or are they just going to have to wait to get it? Because like we had to stand our ground. Like, hey, we're not changing our formulation. This is what we came out with. We want to do, and it finally got in. But yeah, it was a battle for a while there in Icon.
That's a testament to the size of ProSupps that they were able to throw their weight at GNC, at least at that point, because they were tough on dynamine for a while, even after that. For a while, and
they still have a relatively low cap on it too. Like There we go. A little bit of a spoiler there. So I'm getting these submitted in terms of review, hey, oh, this X amount limit. I'm like, no. The yield is actually under your allowable limit for diamine. We're fine. So in that case, they do have like a pretty strong arm on it. It's interesting too, like some of the things you wouldn't think that they'd cap or they'd care about, like they are very strict on, like they have an upper limit for huperzine, which is an interesting one there too. Their caffeine limit is cut at 350, which is, I think, a good middle of the road number, but yeah, it's interesting always with some of their compliance things. Amazon's a whole other animal in terms of compliance as well, but that's another day.
Well, GNC, I appreciate, even if I don't agree with them on Synephrine or Dynamine, or they drag their heels on Ibeba for so long.
Yep.
But I respect the intra-industry regulation. Like either way, like if I agree or not with their actual decisions, I appreciate that there is someone that has realized they are large enough that they can invest time and money into deciding what is safe for our consumers, because they're big enough that they can in some ways filter the majority of the brands in the industry and make sure they're using safe dosages.
They, from their standpoint, they're liable for it. If it's sitting on their shelf, coming from them, they're a big target, so they have to be mindful of all that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if you don't like it, go to the mom and pop. Like I don't think it should be a debate. The big boys need to act like it. So they do a great job of that. And it might take longer, but if the ingredient suppliers or the brands are really, really serious and they want to fight for their product, they want to fight for their ingredient, then they will do the work to make it happen. And as far as I know, with like Beba, for instance, that is happening. And yeah, it's not a fast process. It is what it is. So someone's got to, once in a while you need to have some adults in the room, because as we know, and this has obviously changed over the last couple of years, but historically speaking, there has been a low barrier to entry in the industry. So a company like GNC has got to be careful. Just because someone's got 8 billion TikTok followers doesn't mean that this is going to be a compliant formula that's made in a really high end facility. So I give them credit for doing that. I don't know what else you guys want to talk about. We mentioned Superhuman Scorch, but we haven't like listed the formula or anything. So I want to drill into that and ask Drew about his thoughts on GBV personally. I'm not sure what you've ever said about it, but this is a liquid L-carnitine formula, 2 grams of carnitine, basically the clinical dose in like nearly every study, and then 500 milligrams of Mitoburn L-Beba from NMB Nutrition, 25 milligrams of the GBB, the pro-carnitine precursor that makes you sweat, and then 10 milligrams of Calorie Burn GP, another ingredient, grains of paradise extract from NMB Nutrition. Drew, what do you think about GBB?
I'm a big fan of it. I mean, if you have trouble sweating, if this is like throwing else, this will get you to sweat. Wifey's a perfect example of that. She's like, oh, I never sweat. I'm like, hey, try this. Like, what the hell is in this? I'm like, exactly. It's a fun ingredient. The exothermic ability of it is very versatile. Doesn't take a lot of it. I think it's that extra icing on the cake. There's a lot of cool data behind it. And it's just something that hasn't been thoroughly vetted to like its fullest extent that deserves to be. I think it's very underrated. Sometimes people go, oh, it's a synthetic ingredient, it's this, and this. I'm like, it's a precursor of carnitine in terms of carnitine body. Like, why? I don't understand the apprehension behind it. I get it. People are cautious with it just because it sounds scary. Gamma bacterial betaine. I'm like, or to say GBB because you probably can't pronounce it anyway. But I'm a fan of it. I like it. Obviously, I have to believe in something to like want it to go on a product. If my rule of thumb typically is if I can't explain something or justify it, either the ingredient or the dosage, then I don't want it to go on the product. I'd rather have an ingredient not be in a product at all if it's not going to be at a good dose. That's kind of how I go about that.
Well, I wrote an article doing quite the deep dive on it because it started coming out and not enough people were like, there wasn't enough like science actually fleshed out and everything. So getting the full text, the human studies that were out there, they were giving some like astronomically large doses, and there were some people definitely dropping out of the study because they were like basically miserable. And so like they were going well above and beyond and they didn't have necessarily side effects. This is a molecule that's in our bodies already. Like we already had the pathways laid out and everything. It was just what happens if you supplement more. And I don't know what these researchers, why they were thinking what they thought, but they were given some like insane doses. And it must have just felt like crazy. Like you don't need that much to feel hot. I guess my question would be like, do we really need it if we are already adding carnitine as well? But if it's a carnitine supplement, I guess you might as well go all in and provide everything you want to like keep it going.
It's an extra hand-in-hand thing. I think it works nice in synergy, extra icing on the cake. It doesn't hurt. At the same time, it's a precursor, but also like people just like how it makes them feel. Like honestly, I sweat really bad anyway, but like, damn, like if I'm working, I want a cardio session, I want to have a good sweat going. This helps you get there faster, you know. Same thing with like beta-alanine. A lot of people like it. One, it works, but two, people like that. Oh, I feel it. I feel my skin tingling. You know, some people also hate that. You know, so it's that sensory effect. I think that one has efficacy, but two, it's that feel effect. If you were to just take carnitine by itself, you're probably not going to feel much, right? Same thing. You took L-beta by itself. You took just the chlorobrin GB by itself, you won't feel it, quote, as much. But if you have something to make that sweat factor go to make you feel visibly hotter, like, oh damn, okay, man, I feel it working, right? But it's not to say it's all for smoke and mirrors. There is cool, you know, promising data for why you put it there, but I definitely am a fan of it. It works in synergy with it.
I'll be really honest with you. After reading the Gorilla Chemist's write up on it, I was less bullish on it for the actual like fat burning, but 100%. I mean, like I've been involved in formulas where I've added in. Mike and I have been involved in formulas together where we've added it in. We still love it, but for a very acute response, people want to sweat, and if you are making a product that has to do with cardio, fat burning, whatever, so long as these people know they're gonna be sweating, I think it totally makes sense. Like if you are. Drew, if you actually worked in a lab where you had to wear a lab coat all day and like a beard and all that, I would not recommend you take GBB before the start of your day. You know, like
I'll tell you one thing. I made a very fun product in the lab for myself because one, it would be outrageously expensive. I'm like, it was like $18 in COGS just for the raw materials. I calculated out, for fuck of it. Just my own personal goodie bag when I was in a contest prep back in 2018. And it was awesome, but the problem, it was almost too good because I made it. I had a few people try this too, and like, what the hell is in this? I'm like, don't worry about it. It was legal, 100%. You just couldn't sell it because nobody would buy it. It'd be like $100 retail. Anyway, I made this thing. I went next door. This is in Dallas. Went over to Old Cowboy Fit there. It's kind of across the way. I did my morning cardio. I was drenched. 40 minutes of cardio. Nothing crazy. Stair climber. Cool. Showered. Still kind of like warm from a cardio session. I went next door. I got to my desk and I'm still kind of hot. I'm still like, you know, kind of perspiring a little bit. It just kept going. I couldn't stop sweating. I got a little bit visions of grandeur per se with the color, with the GBB amounts, and I kept sweating and it started getting worse. So at one point I'd sweated through 3 shirts. I was in this cold sweat. It was the most uncomfortable, annoying thing ever. Like I felt like I needed a fan that was a heater because I was freezing because I was a cold sweat and I just kept sweating through shirt. Because I was like with a paper towel, like wiping down my arms, wiping my face. Like it was that's the weirdest sensation ever. So you do have that fine tipping point, the fine line of how much CB is too much. And that was a perfect example of why. It worked, but at the same time, I wouldn't take it to your point and go sit next door, especially after you've had your heart rate elevated and got the blood flow going, because it does not stop. It does not give a fuck. It just keeps going.
I want to see Drew in a mask just fogging up those goggles or those head. No, so okay, so you're sweating like that much. What do you do as Mr. Drew to replace the water and electrolytes? Do you have a certain preference regarding the sodium, potassium, all that kind of stuff?
Well, honestly, most of my mineral intake is addressed. Anyway, I have adequate salt in my diet. I'm not afraid of it by any means. You know, I use sea salt and just good seasonings throughout the day. If I'm feeling like particularly like depleted or having issues, we do have like, for example, our Superhuman hydration that has the tracks minerals in it, the calcium K, all the good stuff. Or in general, I'm a big fan of Body Armor Light. It rocks. You know, it's not a ton of sugar. It tastes good. It's actually like, the thing that drives me nuts, everybody, like, they get this mindset, all these hydration products, like even Gatorade, it's just this massive load of salt. I'm like, okay, it's not addressing everything. I'm a big more fan of potassium, magnesium. Actually, it's an ingenious product. It's very criminally underrated in terms of the potassium balance and magnesium compared to the salt ratio. So in that case, if I'm really dehydrated, I go the route like Body Armor Light or like a Superhuman hydration that I have on hand. I have it on my desk, actually, speaking of which.
Yeah,
Mike and I have been getting more into the hydration products recently. I mean, I'll give a shameless plug for someone else here. Ghost Hydration was actually really kind of. I mean, I don't think that they have light formulas, but for people who think that Ghost is light formulas, I thought it was a surprising formula. Just the potassium and the magnesium portions of it. You don't see a lot of hydration formulas that have that extra there, to your point on the potassium specifically. And so in general, recently I've been getting really into these electrolyte products, and it's really kind of funny because I've stopped using any pump stuff, and I just start drinking electrolytes like an hour before I train, and I get these great pumps. And it's so funny. I know I'm the king of saying online, like, I can get a pump without a pump product. It's been a thing that I've pushed for a while, but like, it really shows how simple it is to get a pump by just using electrolytes.
Well, I'm on Body Armor's website. I got to drinkbodyarmor.com. Look at the light. It's spelled Lyte.
Yes.
Their nutrition facts label is jacked up. This is not right. But they're okay. So magnesium, they're using magnesium oxide. Magnesium is not listed in the percent daily value areas. So not sure their webmaster messed that up. But I see potassium is at 530 milligrams, 10%. Sodium's at 30 milligrams, 1%. So being someone who likes potassium, I like a little bit more potassium than sodium. I think we can get, it's easy to get sodium. It's not so easy to get potassium. I agree with you. I like it this. From what I'm seeing, at least, I am not a fan of magnesium oxide or the fact that their website doesn't show it. But overall, yeah, I'm with you. Give me some potassium.
I'm looking at one with 700 milligrams potassium.
Well,
how does that not make you
there's
poop?
a label off samsclub.com. I got to find a good label. Amazon. Magnesium, 8%. Okay, so yeah, this label. Well, anyway. Oh, this is no magnesium 8%. This is regular body armor. Okay, well, anyway, that's interesting. We'll have to look into that.
Is hydration changing at all, or are you keeping that there, Drew? What happened? I can't hear. I think he's a mute. Oh.
I muted for a second. Their German Shepherds on the rampage. That one actually is going to very light makeup, and that will simply be we are switching to a natural sweetener, and it's not stevia.
Cool.
I'm very excited.
I love this formula. Sodium chloride, tracks magnesium, Aquamin. We all love Aquamin. Potassium citrate, Calci K, a whole gram of taurine, 50 milligrams of synactive. Well, I mean, what's not to love here? You know.
Yeah, that's
I could take
what
some more
George asked me too. This was here when I came on board. He's hey, just while we're looking at the refresh of all the, I'm doing a forensic analysis of all the products, you know, SKU rationalization, where the products stand for the formulation, and to credit my brothers, there's not much here to change. It's all about hydration. Do you like how it stands for a science spectrum? I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. I'm not a fan of like this giant salt block. This is great. This is something that I would drink, and I do drink. I'm like, hey, this is awesome. So it is getting a natural angle on the sweetener versus the sucralose, which is great. And yeah, but it's just the same aside from that. Adding a new flavor, I'm excited for. Speaking of which,
yeah,
interesting side tangent. You know what I don't understand, and I've seen this a few times lately, and it makes no sense to me, is why brands, when they go about sweetening things, I've seen this three places. They put both sucralose as well as stevia in the sweetener system. I'm like, why would you do that? Because the whole point usually when you're using stevia is to avoid using artificial sweeteners, correct? So why would you?
Sometimes that's not enough.
Because I think that I personally do not like stevia. I think if I have the option to use sucralose or ACE-K, I'm going to go that all day. I'm not going to use stevia. Like, I just am not a fan of it. But
if I had the option to kill stevia, like literally take it out back, I would. Like, I hate it.
It's like marry, fuck, kill with like our natural sweeteners. Or stevia and monk fruit.
I'd keep monk fruit. I'd marry sucralose, and I'd kill stevia. Like,
I'd kill it twice.
Yeah, I think you were talking about natural sweeteners.
Oh,
yeah. You use sucralose.
I'm marrying monk fruit, right?
I'm marrying monk fruit.
And then what's the other one?
Erythritol.
Erythritol. Yeah.
There's a common erythritol, which I'm a big fan of. Yeah, and it's just from birch.
Wasn't stevia? Isn't stevia like the most recent like clickbait study on it being unsafe? Like, wasn't there something that came out like late last year on stevia being terrible for people now? Like, it's just a revolving door. Yeah. That's the point of my joke, is that all of them eventually get one of these.
And I'm going down that rabbit hole. I think that drives me nuts too about when you see things, sweetened naturally with monk fruit, and you look at it and like how the actual, for example, like the powdered sweeteners, right? You look at it, it's like predominantly still erythritol with like a little bit of monk fruit added at the end. One, because it's extremely expensive, and two, it's very, 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 very sweet, and it kind of has a weird flavor. It balances it out. Same thing when you buy like stevia. Never make this mistake. I've done this way back in my early days. So like before I was even like in formulating, they go, this is cool. Try some stevia. I got like stevia extract. There's a massive difference between how stevia extract tastes versus like the stuff you get in that packet or things are sweetened with. It is actually very, very, very bitter. It tastes horrible. It has to be cut because it has such a strong taste.
Yeah, most of these packets you're getting have some maltodextrin in them.
Yeah, like maltodextrin and like a stevia mix to water it down, because otherwise, like stevia extract is very bitter. It's not good. It's bad.
I like it.
I just spilled energy drink everywhere. Sorry. So yeah, with to get back to your question, I might need to piece out for just a second. The companies that are mixing sucralose and stevia together is they're trying to lower the sucralose dose. And I'm speaking specifically to Caged Muscle or Caged, where they have a far lower sucralose dose. But stevia, in my opinion, and I guess in theirs too, it's just not good enough on its own to carry those products. But by adding some stevia, you can lower the sucralose, which seems to be the compromise at the time, which I'm personally okay with that because their stuff tastes good to me when they do that. But yeah, if you remove the sucralose, I'm sure it wouldn't taste as good.
Yeah, to me, the whole point, if you're using one or the other, like a sample of stevia, it's to avoid having to use artificial sweeteners. It satisfies, that Whole Foods crowd. That's why I kind of thought it was interesting. I'm like, why do both? That doesn't make any sense to me. I guess if like in the perspective of, oh, we'd like to lower the sucralose amount, but then to that point, I'm like, okay, but why? A lot of times the amount's not disclosed. I know NutriBio discloses it on theirs in terms of flavor system, but honestly, sometimes when people, like, for example, ask, well, how much sucralose is in the scoop of this? I'm like, we don't disclose that.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, if I told you, oh, it has 120 milligrams, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
Like, does somebody in their head have like this arbitrary number? Like, I will not drink anything that has over 120 milligrams of sucralose per serving. Like, does anybody actually know what that number, or you just want to know just to know, right? Like,
I apply that concept to so much in this industry, like
your co-man.
like knowing where your knowing where your co-man is, like what does it mean to you, or like any parts of these things. Prop 65 statements showing up on bottles. Like a lot of brands are afraid to put that Prop 65 on their bottle, but you realize you're going to get a total of one email a month about it. Yes, there will be the Bens and Mikes of the industry that will ask those harder questions, but for the vast majority of people, it does not. Like 100 milligrams of sucralose means nothing to 99% of people. So it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Because I want to say, okay, well, if you want to show that you're using less sucralose, you put the dosages of them. So you're showing, okay, because we're using the stevia, we only need 50 milligrams of sucralose. But to a lot of people, 50 milligrams of sucralose could sound like a ton.
Yep.
Because there's no point, there's no scale here. There's no point of reference for most of these people. I don't know. It's kind of a losing battle with most of these things, like trying to appeal to the natural community, trying to appeal to whatever. It's mostly a losing battle.
That's not interesting. I mean, if you tell somebody, oh, it has X grams of sugar, people have a relative idea in their head of that. Like if I said, oh, I look at a can of Mountain Dew and it's 46 grams of sugar, even a person rudimentary understanding, that's a shit ton of sugar, or like you show the visual thing here's how much, like in granulated form, sugar is in this can, right?
Right.
If you were to put like, say, even 300 milligrams, which is a shit ton, and in a lot of cases of sucralose on the table next to that amount of like the 46 grams of sugar, you're like, that's it, right? But like, where does that number in your head come from? That's my pose that interesting question. Like, what does this information mean to you? Did you read a study saying, oh, if it has over X amount of per serving, you're getting over X amount per day if you're tracking your sucralose intake, which I don't even know if one could do if they tried. That'd be an interesting experiment. Is there a cutoff? Like, what does this information mean? That's just what
I think that social media has. I'm sorry. I just say that I think that social media has increased the ability of these people to reach to Drew specifically. And so just because you're getting those inquiries doesn't mean that it's really all that much. It just means they have more of an ability to get to you. Whereas years ago, when people were buying mail order supplements, like you'd have to call and get on the phone with someone to ask them why there's sucralose in the bottle.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned, I don't know what I missed, but Ben mentioned like, the challenge of trying to appeal to the natural consumer. I guess like, if the brand, a Cage, for instance, has a Chris Gethin there, who is clearly on that type of wavelength, we'll say, then I guess it makes sense because a lot of people are following him for that wavelength. But why do you know why Alpha Lion is moving to natural sweeteners for the Superhuman hydration? Ghosts is also like naturally sweetened. So is that is this demographic looking for hydration supplements? Are they wanting natural sweetening?
It's a combination of, one is just, I want to do it just because and to see how it reacts. Too, if it's a simple formula like this, it's not all that hard to mask. I mean, in that case, hey, why not? Why not use like a natural sweetener? Just to kind of try it out. But it's kind of a good, wholesome product. It also sets a table if we want to expand this product into some other markets. In terms of the natural space, we have the ability to do so. Then sure enough, I know somebody's going to try to kick back about the different forms of the electrolytes in there, but you can't make everybody happy. But it's just something interesting and wait, why not kind of idea.
Right.
I think if you can, you should, right? Like if it's possible, why not make the product more accessible to more people? But I wouldn't necessarily expect you to start putting a green leaf on the front of the bottle and saying like flavored naturally or any but it's kind of like technically Coronas are gluten free. They don't market them as gluten free because they think that would change the way that it's perceived by consumers. But if you have celiacs or if you're intolerant to gluten, that you can drink these things. So it's accessible, but it's not, I'm not saying that like being a vegan marketed brand is like softer or anything, but it's not necessarily going to convey itself well alongside Superhuman Supreme.
I was going to say.
What else is gluten-free, Ben? Bacon.
Yeah.
It's got
Fair.
a whole fridge full of.
So I don't want to keep dragging this part out, but one interesting note is when it comes to things like, for example, plant protein, vegan protein, one thing, I don't know why everybody in their head automatically goes a connotation when they come out of the product. A lot of sports nutrition brands are guilty of this, and that's fine. I get it. You do competitive analysis, you look at everything out there, and a lot of these plant proteins, which are predominantly been in that Whole Foods customer type space, a lot of them are naturally sweetened, naturally flavored, right? For a brand such as, like Alpha Lion, we're not traditionally playing in that space. I'm not necessarily going after, if we're working on a vegan protein, wink, for having that Whole Foods customer as our main demographic. We're looking for the people instead to say, hey, I just would like an alternative to like a dairy-based protein. Mm-hmm. In that case, if we're sticking within that bandwidth, chances are the customer that would capture us and want to be picking up our vegan protein, for example, or plant-based protein, they're not going to care so much about having natural sweetener because technically sucralose and ACE-K, they're vegan. They're not animal derived. You can use them. So I don't know why people don't think they're accessible. If you're looking for the natural angle, yes. But also, to my point here is the average person, if they're like interested in our brand or whatever, and they're buying our brand to begin with, somebody that's drinking something with 300 milligrams of caffeine and some artificial colors and sucralose isn't going to give a shit if it's stevia or if it's sucralose and that plant protein. They want that plant protein either A, because they have lactose intolerance, or they just want to have something that's not animal derived. Do you see my point? So that's the big thing people need to step back and look at. Like, why are you using natural sweetener? Is it because of a demographic, because your personal preference, or because, the other plant proteins have this, we need to do this too? Mm-hmm. That's kind of something I think people lose perspective of.
I think you're totally right. Earlier this year, I went completely gluten and dairy free just to see what would happen. And in my searches for proteins, it was so difficult to find. I shouldn't say so difficult. There were a choice few that were very good, but to find animal free or at least dairy free proteins that were not naturally sweetened, because I didn't care to try any stevias. If I already try so much for work, I wasn't going to do it for the rest of my life. And so it was actually quite funny, to be honest with you, because I ended up enjoying quite a few different plant proteins, but I definitely think the Superhuman market has a place for sucralose plant proteins. I think that you probably have a fair amount of people using your pre-workouts, but can't drink, dairy or whatever it is.
Oh, that's spot on. So there you go. And then Miss Shepherd again. I keep going back to that.
I have to go back.
My coworker, man.
Sorry. So when I knocked my ghost energy over here, I was looking for an old email I had sent to Ben back in the NutriBio days. So I finally found it. But the title, Monday, March 12th, 2018, 7:52 a.m. Title, their subject: will NutriBio Natural Series make my dick and balls fall off? And I cited a study where they gave like these enormous doses of stevia to rats and they went infertile. And so I was kind of messing with Ben on that.
I remember this email.
I knew I said it. And so I finally found it. But if you do like the human equivalent dose of the stevia in this study, it was pretty much like a wheelbarrow's worth of stevia.
Yeah.
But if you give a wheelbarrow worth of stevia to a human, I'm sure you're probably going to have some problems. But
you encounter issues long before your dick and balls falling off. You ate that much stevia. Just like, yes, I'm completely going to go there. There's like a study that clenbuterol is anabolic, but the problem is it was done in horses, and like the equivalent amount for a human dose would put you in a coffin.
Yeah.
So that's how I use clenbuterol to get jacked, bro. It's not going to have muscle. Anyway, that segue's done.
It's yeah. I mean, we talk about this constantly. I got into it with a fit chick coach last week about sucralose being bloating and having gastrointestinal issues. I mean, it was beautiful. It was beautiful because I asked her to send me literally any study that would ever claim any of this. And so she sent me a review that literally concluded that there was no evidence of any of this.
That's the best part, when people, they try to think that they're cute and they send studies, and then I'm like, did you actually read your study? Because your study agrees with what I'm saying. Shut the fuck up. Like,
I mean, Mike, you occasionally drop the sucralose from your life, but that's more of like a dealing with the sweetness, right?
yeah, so it's more of like the dopamine fasting thing, and that's something we'll have to get Dr. Kamsapa back on to talk about. But in general, I've noticed that when trending towards the carnivore-ish diet, and I usually do like a carnivore adjacent style where I keep the hot peppers in there. But if you drop the sweeteners and switch to like, I'll still do like a fat burning pill or something like that. The bitter stuff and the spicy stuff starts tasting a lot better, and you stop getting hooked on that dopamine kick or the sweetness. And like things like black coffee taste phenomenal, especially like a not bad coffee start tasting really good. So it's not the sucralose I'm against, it's more of the sweetness and the dopamine spike over and over and over that we get hooked on, that I occasionally think is good to fast from.
It's reasonable. I mean, that this comes up in my Q&A almost every single day. Is like, should I cycle testosterone boosters? Should I cycle pre-workouts? I think in general, we're changing the chemistry of our body quite often with a lot of these things that we're using, even if it is just a very simple product. And taking some time off to allow your body to do its own thing absolutely makes sense. I mean, I think a lot of the times we get very nitty gritty on what the data says instead of just using common sense.
Common sense is not common, as the old saying goes.
That's a good point. So we're rounding out on an hour and a half here. So I think a couple things to look forward to. Drew, I don't know if you know this, but we're going to be together for the ISSN this year, is my understanding. So I don't know if Mike is coming to that or not in June, but we're going to be chopping it up at the ISSN, learning all about the new studies coming out. So that'll be some fun content coming. And one of the things I really enjoy about working alongside Drew is that we are pretty much in a lot of the same communities, in the same ingredient circles. And then New Live, even though I think did I introduce you to New Live at Supply Side that one year when we finally linked up with Ken?
No, I've actually, the funny part about there, Aquaman, as I affectionately call him, or Great Value Aquaman, that is. For anybody that doesn't know who this is, look up Ken Montez of New Live Science and tell me he does not look like Aquaman.
He's Aquaman for sure.
Can't not see it. Anyway, he pursued me for years via email. It's like, hey, we got this ingredient. And then finally, like, across paths, I'm like, look, motherfucker. And he's actually a really cool dude. But anyway, like, I think we actually met him in person. It was like a supply side at the booth. But very cool guy, another great friend of ours. But yeah, it's interesting in this world. And this time, too, the ISSN is actually in my backyard down here in Fort Lauderdale. So this time you can't come down to Florida for 3 days and ignore me, asshole, being 10 minutes away.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
It was sad, Drew. There was no tacos to be had because you were too busy for me.
Well, we're looking forward to it. I mean, it's funny though. I do want to know NNB, New Live, Nutrition 21. Like, we have like quite a few different circles that we frequent together. It's pretty cool because I think we end up with almost all the same standpoints on pretty much everything. But there's been some pretty cool stuff happening. So, looking forward to that, and a good strong year for 2022. There's a couple products that I know about that Alphaline's doing that I cannot wait to share, and I know we can't talk about yet. But I guess maybe we'll have to do this again at some point. Maybe we can get Jordan in on it as well.
I think that'd be great. He's always very excited to talk about the brand as well. And it's the same thing. I just have to be very careful. I don't want to spill too early some of the fun stuff we're working on. I mean, some of it's probably not surprising, but I don't like letting everybody know what's coming yet, not because it's like a big secret, but that's no fun, work in silence. And then when you finally get to unveil it, it's all that more rewarding,
Maybe we can go do the next podcast in Colombia with Jordan.
That'd be awesome. I mean, nobody's going to try to kidnap the Yeti. You may be seen last in the mountains and never come back, but that's okay.
All right, Mike, you got
Drew. Where do we find you? We have at Vanilla Gorilla Drew on Instagram. Are you and then alpha.lion on Instagram? Drew, are you TikToking? What's your TikTok?
I am same. Alpha Vanilla Gorilla Drew.
Check your TikTok right now.
Bro, I went viral the last couple of days, man.
What'd you do?
I posted a shoulder training video, and next thing I know, it has like 30 some thousand views.
There it is. Very nice. Shoulder pump.
I will tell you, TikTok is a whole nother animal in terms of people just like being salty assholes. For
my God.
I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like, I just posted a video saying, oh, these got a little heavy training video. The next time people are commenting, your shorts are gay. Your shorts are gay. Half reps, trash. I'm like, okay. But then one guy's like, man, do your boyfriend know you're wearing somebody else's shorts? You're a snowflake. I'm like, but why, sir? Are you so salty?
TikTok is crazy because if you actually respond to those comments, if you can make really funny content, like making fun of those content, and it blows up. Like I have a very like internal problem with our PricePlow TikTok right now because the content that does best for us is when I say very controversial things that people don't like, but it resonates very well with like thousands of people. But that's not a very good way to run a business on TikTok. Like being not, I mean, I'm not mean to anyone, but like there's so many salty.
You've been mean.
I have been mean, but it does well and people want to see it for some reason and it's hard. So
like, hey, do you want to see the worst fucking product I've ever seen in terms of somebody going to prison? Check out this label.
Yeah. And 100,000 views in a day, it is really something else, but I'm trying to be nice now. So we've had less views, but we've been happier. So anyway,
maybe this weekend. Anyway, so that's where you can find Vanilla Gorilla Drew, and you can go to PricePlow.com/alpha-lion, sign up for the alerts to get notified when the new stuff comes out, or just follow everyone on social media. Thanks everyone for listening. Let's try to get this up Monday, April 11th.
Awesome.
And
I don't have anything else. Drew, thanks so much for your time. This is a fun one.
Dude, of course. I said, try to cover some fun stuff. Still recording, so it's all good. But no, just find a fun mix of talking about some branding stuff and not make it like dry where it's not entertaining, So I think a good mix there.
Awesome.
All right, so it's time to take the dog out.
The problem is she plays community watch. You see somebody outside and like she growls to them and barks, and then of course the echoes everywhere. I'm like, can you not? I'm podcasting, girl.
It's not the worst thing. All right. Well, we'll end this one and we'll do another one soon.
Fantastic, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we'll talk a little bit more. I think I have hinted at you like some of the stuff we are working on, like some unique SKUs, RGD space, bar space. I have like 5 products in those 2 categories alone. Hopefully this year, gummies are going to be everything dropping that I'm super excited for. Like we have some really fun stuff.
Cool. All right. We're looking forward to it.
Awesome.